Title: TIFU. By having my entire family witness me getting head in my car from my girlfriend at the time. The tale I'm about to weave happened some time ago. Figured I'd tell this story though, so here it goes. I used to date this girl, and early on in our relationship we were all about the going out to bars phase and hanging out every chance we could. Well, it was a Friday night and my brother was playing guitar at a bar, so I thought it'd be fun to join my parents and my sister and drink and listen to him play. My parents arrived at the bar first, and then my girlfriend and I arrived in my car. We parked a couple cars down from my dad's car. There were a ton of cars, so we found a spot and nestled right in. Cut to an hour in, we're having a grand old time, drinking and yucking it up with my family. Well, I look at my girlfriend and she flashes me the sexy eyes, and of course, me being a drunk and horny 23-year-old decides to flash em back. So I pretend I'm going outside with her to have a smoke, and we go to my car and it's pretty dark out. No one is around. I triple check to look for people, and then when I assume it's safe I pull out my log and she starts giving me the OL blowy. Now I'm in the car for a good 15 minutes with her, and we were both drunk, but not completely useless. But we both must have lost track of time because we were so in the moment that we didn't realize the gig my brother was playing let out. I hear the knock on the window first, and we both jump about 2 feet in the air in our seats. I look up. My sister starts walking away shaking her head. I see my mom with the most horrified look on her face. My brother is loading up my dad's car with his music equipment. My dad just turned and tried to hurry my mom back to their car. Meanwhile, my girlfriend pretends to be looking for a contact while I'm struggling to zip up my jeans. The next day my girlfriend and I had plans for dinner with my parents. I wanted to get ahead of the situation to gauge my dad's reaction and to hopefully find out what exactly they saw. So I begin to open my mouth when he cuts me off and says, "So we're having chicken for dinner tonight." Cool, Dad, but less than insert GFS name here greater than as a vegetarian. And without missing a beat my dad says, "Not from what we saw last night. Unless you have a broccoli dick." Title: TIFU. By marrying a sociopath who faked having cancer and then divorced them. Like most TIFUs, this story actually happened in the past, and I'm on a throwaway account to protect my anonymity. About 6 years ago, I was dating a girl who I had go to school with and reconnected with at a bar one night after blacking out from alcohol and marijuana. The start to any true love story. In our quest to escape reality, we really hit it off and started drinking and smoking pot pretty much every day, and eventually got into the occasional harder drugs. This didn't seem like a problem at the time. Though we were both in the throes of substance dependency, it was easily ignored as socially acceptable. Fast forward a few years and everything seemed great. I had a great job, we had just moved into a nice apartment, and we were deeply in love. She was my best friend, and I saw us getting married and having a family one day. However, in the winter a few years ago, she gave me the devastating news that cancer from childhood had returned. It was heartbreaking to hear, and I did everything I could to comfort her. I told her how I would take care of her and love her no matter what, and that we were going to beat it. I offered to go to her doctor appointments, give her rides, buy whatever she needed, and do what any good partner would do. But things seemed off from the get-go. While she was always getting sick from chemo, anytime I tried to take off work to go to a doctor's appointment, the appointment would get changed at the last minute. Or something else would pop up, like a UTI or injury that would require going to the ER. I can't tell you how many days I spent with her waiting in ERs or taking her to doctor's appointments at various hospitals. I even picked her up at Dana-Farber about 10 times after supposed doctor appointments. The odd part was, whenever I was able to be there, doctors would always ask me to leave the room before speaking with her, which I didn't see as odd at the time. That gave her the cover she needed to keep the ruse going. I figured most of her sicknesses that popped up were related to the chemo. After all, she was losing lots of weight, was very sickly, and throwing up daily. She also was able to answer most of my questions related to her treatment. Being an idiot and because I wanted her to know that I was in it for the long haul, I eventually proposed to her. And that fall we had an amazing wedding. Over 100 of our closest friends and family, a beautiful fall day and one of the happiest days of my life. Her uncle, a lawyer, officiated for us and I was happy to call her my wife. The odd part was, I never signed the forms to get the marriage certificate because she was taking care of it and her uncle who married us and was supposedly helping to expedite it. But a few weeks late, the marriage certificate never arrived. I asked about it, and it was always in the mail. I found that odd, but bought the lie hook, line and sinker for the next few months. All the while, her illness would get better, then get worse, then get better. At this point, I was paying for everything, and she was down to working part-time according to her. I even gave her money to pay off her supposed medical bills. But then one day I saw her drinking while supposedly on chemotherapy medication and I realized that something was seriously wrong. I decided I had to confront her and I needed to hear about her illness from a doctor's mouth without her filtering it, because any time I brought up the doctors, she would get mad at me for being so incessant. In trying to get the appointment, she was able to delay the inevitable for a few more months, until I physically took her to her hospital and stood there as she asked to speak with her doctor. Shortly after, a doctor brought us to a room where she came clean about not having cancer and proceeded to have a mental breakdown and was institutionalized. I'll never forget how it felt sitting in the room as the lies of the past few years crumbled before me. It was the most pain I ever felt in my life and was like the past few years of my life were a complete lie. I should have ended it there. But stupidly I didn't. I decided to try to help her still through her actual illness, which had components of schizophrenia and bulimia. If I had to guess, I'd say it also had a component of being a sociopath, but I'm no psychologist. Anyway, she got out of the hospital after a few days and then went into an inpatient treatment, then outpatient, and then back and forth a few times over the next few months. Anyone that has ever dealt with bulimia knows it's a very hard to treat disease, and I had shrugged off all of her abuse and lies as being related to the bulimia. Eventually, when she was stable, we started planning to move to New Hampshire because her new job was in New Hampshire. Being the fool I was, I found a new job myself in New Hampshire. My first day I was let out early, and when I got home I found her drunk on the couch and surprised as ever to see me seeing her. Even with empty bottles around, she denied any responsibility and started getting mad at me. It was at that moment I knew there was nothing I could do. I finally kicked her out and started looking into a divorce. Problem was, I never got my marriage certificate. She eventually told me that the paperwork was never done and our marriage wasn't legal. Not believing her at this point, I literally ran a background check on myself to be sure. She was actually telling the truth, which is odd because her uncle the lawyer married us. Thankfully it was the easiest divorce in history. Though I was fool, I don't regret trying to be a good boyfriend and husband. I haven't seen her since the day I kicked her out, but I hope she eventually got the help she needed fighting her demons. I'm glad I was able to get help fighting mine, as the experience really messed me up for some time. I'm happy to say my life is so much better now. I'm in a loving relationship with someone who is trustworthy and I haven't touched any drugs in over a year. I wish I didn't go through what I did, but I'm glad I made it out the other side. Frankly, I wouldn't believe this story if it didn't happen to me. But that's okay. I feel like I made it through hell and back, and it made me stronger and much wiser. She was never held responsible for her abuse and theft, but I will leave that up to universe to work out. I'm just grateful to be free. Title: TIFU by changing my store manager's work login password to Queen 696,969. Happened last night, but only found out how big I fucked up today when I went into work. So, I'm an assistant manager for a large supermarket chain. Last night I went into work as usual. Did my usual thing of managing a bunch of part-time students who don't give a fuck about their job and only care about their paycheck at the end of the month, same as me. So the night goes fine, we get everything done and I head to the office to do. Let's just say I have to click a button so numbers for the day get sent somewhere. The only way I can click this button is by using the login details associated with the store manager. Now, these login details are something he uses to get into the in-store computer, and he uses them probably 30 times a day when he is working. All managers have their own logins, but the store manager's logins are the only way you can press this button at the end of the night. So, as I sign in with his login details, a tab pops up telling me I have to change the password before I can progress. There is absolutely no way I can press this button, which I need to press, without changing the password. So I change it to Queef Queen 696,969. I write the password on a piece of paper and out it in the drawer labeled Store Manager. Me and the store manager get along really well, and I know he would usually find this hilarious. But the next morning when he arrived, he had a store visit from the head of sales for his country. This only happens one day out of every year, if that. Sometimes once every 2 years. I'm gonna set a scene now from what I heard from the store manager. Him, his area manager, the head of sales for the country are sitting in the store office. The head of sales asks to see something on the computer. He asked to see staff expenditure, which is something that can only be accessed from the store manager's logins. The store manager tells him his login details. Head of sales tries to log in using his old password. It didn't work. Tries again, didn't work. Store manager realized the password was changed the night previous, as happens quite often, and texts me as he knows I was the one working the night previous. I tell him the password is on a piece of paper in his drawer. He then tells the head of sales for the country that said password is on piece of paper in the drawer next to him. Head of sales opens the drawer and pulls out a piece of paper that says, password Queef Queen 696,969. He told me that the head of sales typed it in and placed the piece of paper back in the drawer without mentioning anything whatsoever. It was only when he went back to sign in after the head of sales and area manager both left that he saw the piece of paper with the password. He's expecting a very angry phone call from the area manager very soon, in which I will probably get in a lot of trouble. But all I can do is laugh uncontrollably every time I pass him while working.